There was a moment when you could not turn on a TV, open your phone, or walk into a family gathering without seeing the same movement repeated again and again. Arms swinging. Feet sliding. Laughter filling the room. It was not a concert stage or a championship parade. It was living rooms, school hallways, church parking lots. For a brief time, the world moved to one rhythm. Children danced. Grandparents smiled. Celebrities joined in. Politicians tried to keep up. From America to Europe, from Asia to Australia, the same song carried the same simple joy. It felt harmless. It felt unifying. It felt unforgettable. But behind that moment was a teenager who had no time to prepare for what was coming next. How does a young artist rise overnight? Build a fortune worth millions, and then lose everything just as fast? How does global fame amplify silence instead of healing pain? And what happens when the world stops dancing? But the pressure never leaves. This is not just a story about a viral song. It is a story about growing up too fast. About trauma that does not disappear with success. And about a culture that celebrates the moment, but often ignores the cost. Silento was born Richard Lamar Hawk on January 22, 1998, in Stone Mountain, Georgia. From the beginning, his life carried weight most children never choose. He later said he entered the world with drugs already in his system. Marijuana. Cocaine. Pills. Substances that marked his body before he could speak his first word. His parents divorced early. What followed was a household shaped almost entirely by women. His mother. His grandmother. His aunt. 7 women. 1 boy. In that space, his grandmother became the center of gravity. She was protection. She was belief. She was the first person who told him he had something special inside him. Music arrived early. Not as ambition, but as escape. He dreamed of stages and crowds. Of voices rising back at him. His influences stretched across genres. Usher. Ciara. Mariah Carey. Justin Bieber. Robin Thicke. Future. Michael Jackson. Artists who blended movement with emotion. Rhythm with identity. He was drawn to performance, not noise. But childhood was not gentle. He grew up surrounded by instability and untreated trauma. Later diagnoses followed. Bipolar disorder. Depression. Anxiety. Medication entered his life early. So did confusion. He spoke about seeing family members unravel, arguing with invisible enemies, turning pain inward and outward at the same time. When his grandmother passed away, the ground shifted again. His mother was struggling. He moved in with his aunt, who was financially stable and disciplined. A pharmaceutical representative. A woman who believed structure could save him. New house. New school. New environment. It did not go smoothly. He was bullied. Isolated. Angry. Fights followed. Trouble escalated. Juvenile detention became part of his story. His aunt pushed him toward education, toward a predictable future. But the streets around Atlanta were speaking louder. Kids his age were either selling drugs or rapping. He chose the second path. By middle school, he committed to music with intention. No profanity. Positive themes. A role model, at least in his own mind. He joined a group called Young Swag Kids. Recording songs about grades and discipline. It was innocent. It was hopeful. By high school, he went solo. He renamed himself Silento. Less talk. More action. He performed everywhere he could. School events. Birthday parties. Talent shows. Anywhere with a microphone and a crowd. People knew his name before they knew his future. He was chasing a dream without a map. And he had no idea how fast that dream was about to catch him. The idea did not come from a studio. It came from a bathroom. A sink. A quiet moment alone. He tapped out a rhythm with his hands, turning porcelain into percussion. Living in his aunt's basement. He worked with what he had. No beat. No budget. Just movement and instinct. At school, he started performing the dance. The reaction was immediate. Laughter. Imitation. Energy. He filmed a short clip and posted it online, just 15 seconds, no production, no polish. The comments flooded in. Especially from young girls tagging friends. Sharing. Reposting. Asking for more. He took the idea back to a producer he knew from earlier years. At first, the response was cold. The song did not sound serious. It felt simple. Almost too simple. But he kept asking. 4 months. Until finally, the producer gave in and built a basic beat. A Christmas gift. Nothing more. When the track hit SoundCloud, the numbers moved fast. 1,000 plays the first day. 4,000 the next. Then millions. Not slowly. All at once. What followed was chaos. Every major label wanted in. Meetings. Offers. Pressure. He signed a multi-album deal with Capitol Records, drawn by the artists he admired and the promise of stability. When the official video dropped in May 2015, the internet exploded. The song climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. It stayed on the charts for nearly a year. The dance crossed every boundary. Athletes. Actors. Morning shows. Late-night television. Political figures. Parents and children doing the same moves in the same living rooms. The song went 6 times platinum. Awards followed. Nominations followed. The moment became history. But behind the scenes, structure mattered. His aunt kept him in school. His money was protected. He graduated before fully stepping into the machine. Only then did the touring begin. Airports. Hotels. Crowds. Countries. Applause on repeat. For a teenager, it was overwhelming. The fame did not arrive in layers. It arrived as a flood. Expectations replaced curiosity. Silence replaced guidance. And when the world finally stopped dancing, he was left alone with pressure he never learned how to manage. The peak had passed. And the fall was already beginning. Success did not erase the damage that came before it. When the tours slowed and the cameras turned away, the pressure stayed. Depression does not disappear when the checks clear. It waits. Sometimes it grows louder. He began to spiral quietly at first. Missed appearances. Confusion. Paranoia. People close to him noticed changes in behavior that felt alarming. Not rebellious. Not careless. Something deeper. Something unstable. In 2017, trouble followed him overseas. A dispute with a promoter in the Middle East left him stranded, passport confiscated. Ordered to pay tens of thousands of dollars before he could return home. For a teenager far from family, the fear was real. Lawyers intervened. The case was resolved. But the damage lingered. By the time his debut album finally arrived, years after his viral success, the momentum was already fading. Family relationships strained. Trust eroded. He later said jealousy crept in. Along with isolation. The people meant to protect him struggled to keep control. A public cry for help came during a televised interview with a clinical psychologist. He spoke openly about lifelong depression. About fighting demons that never left. About fame adding weight instead of relief. A psychological evaluation followed. Treatment plans were made. But after the cameras stopped rolling, the follow-up never happened. Then the world shut down. The pandemic cut off touring. Income slowed. Structure disappeared. His mental health deteriorated further. He later attempted to take his own life. From there, events escalated rapidly. Arrests followed. Domestic disturbances. Entering a stranger's home while armed. Claims of being followed. Accusations of racial profiling. Statements about surveillance and political messages that alarmed those listening. In early 2021, everything collapsed. Police responded to gunfire in a Georgia neighborhood before dawn. A man lay in the street, shot multiple times. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Security footage later tied the shooter to someone the victim knew well. The victim was his cousin. Charges came swiftly. Murder. Felony murder. Aggravated assault. Gun possession during a felony. Requests for bond were denied. Judges cited untreated mental illness and a documented history of ignoring medication. There was no dramatic ending. No closure. Just a cell. Court dates ahead. And a family asking the world not for judgment, but for understanding. This was no longer a cautionary tale. It was a tragedy still unfolding. In the United States, the reaction was divided. Some saw only headlines. Charges. Mugshots. Court documents. Others paused long enough to ask what happens when a child becomes a global brand before becoming an adult. The conversation quietly shifted from entertainment to responsibility. Mental health advocates spoke up, especially within the Black community. They pointed to a pattern that felt familiar. Trauma untreated. Symptoms misunderstood. Fame mistaken for stability. The system reacts only after damage is done. By then, it is usually too late. Media coverage focused on the extremes. The viral rise. The violent collapse. But few stories lingered on the years in between. The missed interventions. The moments when help was offered but never sustained. In America, where celebrity is often confused with resilience, vulnerability is still seen as weakness. Outside the United States, the story landed differently. For international audiences, the song remained a joyful memory disconnected from the men behind it. Many were shocked to learn what followed. The contrast was unsettling. A dance that once symbolized unity now tied to a narrative of loss and untreated illness. The case also reopened a larger conversation about how the entertainment industry handles young talent. Contracts move faster than care. Profits arrive before protection. When fame fades, the safety net often disappears with it. Older Americans, especially parents and grandparents, recognized something deeper. They saw echoes of their own families. Children who needed guidance more than applause. Young men carrying invisible scars. Communities taught to endure pain quietly. This was no longer about one artist or one crime. It became a mirror. A reflection of how society celebrates moments but neglects people. How success can mask suffering. And how mental health, when ignored, does not simply fade into the background. It waits. And eventually, it demands attention. Some stories do not end with answers. They end with silence. Courtrooms instead of stages. Memories instead of applause. This is one of those stories. A song once brought people together across generations and borders. For a moment, it erased distance. It made strangers move in the same direction. That legacy cannot be undone. But neither can the damage that followed when a young man carried unresolved trauma into a world that only asked him to perform. What remains is not a punchline or a headline. It is a warning. Talent without protection is fragile. Fame without mental health support is dangerous. And success, no matter how massive, does not heal wounds that were never treated. For many Americans watching from a distance, this story feels uncomfortable because it feels familiar. Families have seen versions of this before. Not with millions of views. Not with record deals. But with sons, nephews, and cousins who struggled quietly while the world kept moving. The legacy here is not about a dance. It is about responsibility. About how we care for young people once we profit from their gifts. About whether we value human stability as much as viral moments. There is still a man behind the headlines. A family carrying grief. A community forced to confront hard truths about mental health, trauma, and accountability. No verdict can rewind time. No sentence can restore what was lost. If this story made you think of someone you love, say their name in the comments. If it reminded you that pain often hides behind success, share your thoughts below. Conversations like these matter more than views ever will. Some stories do not end cleanly. but they can still teach us how to do better.